Thank you, Amy. Where do you find yourself on the peace or joy trajectory this morning? Where? Are you a joyful person? If you aren't, you may be a little hesitant to admit that. Or you may say it loud and proud because you might feel like, well, at least I don't give in to denial. If you do consider yourself joyful, that may have a deeper story. It may come after a whole lot of self-talk. It might be because you are optimistic, an optimistic person, or because you've done a lot of hard work to get there. You may be a person who lives by that if we don't have joy, what is there? What is there left if we don't have joy? So how do we grapple with holding on to, living out, and being prompted by an authentic faith when we see so much around us that threatens to deflate any joy that we might cling to? Does our joy come from the things around us only? Does it come from how we're doing personally? Or from an external prompt, from someone telling us we really should be joyful? For those of us living in relative comfort, personally isolated from much of the turmoil that goes on in this world, we do have the choice to be more or less tuned out to realities such as climate change and the ramifications of shootings in schools and rollbacks of human rights. We may hold on to the hopes that our culture will come out of this slump, ready to move ahead, even stronger and with more expansiveness than ever. There may be indications that there still are a few new frontiers to explore and to conquer. I clearly remember when I first realized that development is not synonymous with improvement. In other words, development can have various faces, and it doesn't guarantee moving us forward towards something better, something more wholesome for everything and everyone. I'll give you an example. Raising an orchard to build a new housing development, wholesome for everyone and everything? Well, there's more living and working space in these communities. Possibly there's safer neighborhoods. There's also more concrete, increased demand for water, elimination of plant and animal life, bigger and newer environments for families, and also depletion of resources that benefit all humans, vegetation and animal species. I was a youngish student when I realized this for the first time. It came at a time when I felt the future looked bright. I had elaborate dreams and I thought I had a lot of answers. So yes, realizing that we were not on this endless train toward utopia was sobering. My experiences have changed my understanding and my expectations. But my suspect is that the millennials and the Gen Zers around us have never ever had that perspective. This past summer I spoke at length with one of my grandnieces. She's 16, passionate about missing and murdered Indigenous women, climate change, care for the environment, human and animal rights, and ever so much more. She's an artist. She's a writer. She's a human and animal rights activist. She's an artist. She's curious. She has a very sharp intellect. She has no illusion about the endless expansion of Western culture, nor of its goodness. She's a realist, a fierce fighter for justice, a young person, representing a large group of young people, a generation who simply want the chance to live on a planet that is inhabitable and in communities that are safe for all and everything. Ultimately, isn't this what we all want? Though we might tend to express that in very complex language. Well, no. I would have to say this isn't necessarily what everyone wants. There may be people who are preoccupied and completely obsessed with their own power and their own arrogance and affluence and domination. They have created a blueprint, a rule book that will protect and further their interests. That's no secret, though they may try to disguise it somehow. Consider autocrats. With the rise of autocracies around the globe, we have ample opportunity to observe how autocrats or dictators function. They bluster and threaten. They drone on incessantly to ensure people subscribe to their blueprint, adhere to their rule book, promising, we can fix this, whatever this happens to be at any given point. Or they might even declare, I alone can fix this. Autocrats surely don't ascribe to a wholesome existence for everyone and everything. Furthermore, consider Christians. What? Did she just say Christians? Did she just say Christians are preoccupied with their own power and affluence and arrogance and domination? Yes, she did. Now, before you call me out as being heretical, just give me one moment. Historical Christianity has long been committed to rigid checklists and rules for people without truly seeing them as valued human beings, all of whom are created in the image of the Creator. Historical Christianity has always been more devoted to the rule book and the structure designed to keep the doctrines safe, designing those doctrines specifically to outline who is superior to whom, and who's in and who's out. They have long used texts like the one we heard Amy read to tell people how to think, how to feel, and how to believe. They've taken these texts to should people into submission. This history is foundational to every supremacist movement that has existed within the church. And this heavy-handed reading of Scripture has resulted in religious trauma, depression, and it has led to many rejecting the validity and the value of Christianity. This type of control is a spiritual blueprint, seeing Scripture as a blueprint. Now, an architect, I don't know, do we have any architects here this morning? I'm not one, so I'm going by what I've heard. They will tell you, architects will tell you that a blueprint is a rather fixed, inflexible model requiring rigid adherence to codes and inspections and can be read only one way. Historical Christianity has also treated people this way. They've been inflexible, demanded adherence to codes and inspections, and have told the faithful that there is only one reading of the inspired document. Now, I am not here this morning to give you an inflexible model which requires rigid adherence to codes and inspections and can only be read in one way. I am not here to tell people how to think and believe and feel. I am here this morning to advocate a different reading of Scripture, a different reality, which I hope will offer wholeness for everyone and everything. And that has everything to do with joy. Scripture can be understood much more like a recipe, in which a list of ingredients is offered. Since the same recipe can be used in many different parts of the world, some ingredients may taste and smell different. It might surprise you to know that Rod and I have some favorite recipes we used to make in Germany, and they do not taste the same here. We use the same ingredients in the same amounts, and the taste is different. Now, you explain that to me, but there you have it. So we need to adapt. We adjust, we substitute, and we might have to switch out a beloved recipe for a new favorite. A recipe is a broad construct that is far from rigid. It is freeing. We look at a recipe and we ask some questions. When will we eat this? In the morning or with evening drinks? Appetizer or dessert? Sweet or savory? Main or side dish? In other words, how does it fit? This text from Philippians can be read in 3 categories, helping us to understand how it fits. Those categories are intention, process, and practice, helping us know how it fits. The overarching tone of this text is joy. We should note that the writer of this letter to the church in Philippi was in prison when he wrote this, possibly awaiting execution. So he knew a thing or two about anxiety and fear. Talk about an improbable time to be writing about joy. And that also tells us something. Joy seems to happen independent of outward circumstances. Now that sounds idyllic and quaint, or like a pat answer, but there it is. This is why I call it an intention. And what happens when we set intentions? When we turn our attention to something over and over, we're much more likely to arrive close to where we hope to be in the first place. Joy isn't automatic. There is a process by which we move into that joyful space. This is our intention. And that process is very much about letting go. And letting go is not easy. Have you noticed that? We hold on to things because we think we need to be in control. This time that we live in right now feels so chaotic. Take only the virus as an example, and I could use many. But the virus, scientists are the first to admit that they don't fully understand it. They don't understand everything about how it mutates or the trajectory that it might take. So clearly, we feel impacted by that. We know that it impacts our lives, our health, our school, our friendships, our travel. And this uncertainty is frightening, and it raises our anxiety level. So take a deep breath. How much of what your life consists of can you control? Oh, wait. How much? I don't think a whole lot. But we can control our actions and our responses. We certainly can put forth every effort that is available to us to live responsibly, putting as many safeguards in place as possible. But ultimately, we cannot control others nor the outcome. Letting go in an environment that is uncontrollable and even threatening takes enormous resolve and effort over time. From this text, the first thing to let go of seems to be anxiety. Anxiety can become so much a part of our life that it is hard to imagine life without it. But if we're serious about wanting to reach a place of joy, we will begin by letting go of anxiety. Now, I'm not here to give you a quick solution, and if you're under doctor's care for any type of anxiety, this, what I'm going to say, is simply an addition to that treatment. Letting go of anxiety can be easier if we identify something to put in its place, because nature abhors a vacuum. The time and the energy we spend on anxiety can be exchanged for time and energy spent on something else. I'll give you just one example from this text. Letting God know what you need, what your friends, your family needs, what the world needs. That's why we have prayer time on Sunday mornings. It's not a belief in a magical formula. It's not an ATM. It's an intentional practice of listing causes of anxiety one after the other to let them go. I'm worried about a family member who's really sick. Let it go. I'm worried about the holidays far away from my closest friends. I'm worried about increased violence towards people of color. I'm worried the treatment won't work. I'm worried about failing. I'm worried because I'm shunned because of my gender identity. Insert your own worries. As we list these causes of anxiety one by one, intentionally giving them to God, we have heart space to invite something else like joy, like gratitude, like thankfulness. I'm thankful that I'm here this morning relatively healthy and alert. I'm thankful for, and you fill in the rest. Begin to list things you're thankful for from the very most mundane to the most profound. It will take some time because we have a lot. And as a result, we will come to a place of peace and joy. Our text says that peace stands guard. Imagine that. What embodies peace for you? Imagine that standing guard over your heart, your emotions, your mind. Is it a person? Is it a place? Is it your pet? Is it your home? Imagine what brings you peace and see that standing guard over your heart and mind. That's what peace does. Again, it's not magic. It's not instant, but it is a practice, and it takes practice. You'll not become a musician by giving haphazard attention to a few details of music, picking up an instrument or singing once in a while. No, it takes time. You will not become proficient in your profession by calling in sick whenever you feel like it. Besides that, you'll lose your job. You'll not reach your goal if you succumb to every obstacle and that makes you give up. No, when you're harassed, when you're mocked, when you hit this obstacle, you are going to tend to your wounds. You'll dust yourself off and you'll stand tall again and repeat your intention. Letting go of anxiety, developing consistent gratitude is a practice, an intentional choice which you return to over and over again. It is discipline. It's not instant. Give thanks for all circumstances, the text reads, is more difficult, I find, than being thankful. I mean, how? How can I, a privileged Western white woman, give thanks for all circumstances? All circumstances, not just mine, all, everywhere. This is where Christianity is so often critiqued as being naive and out of touch and even abusive. But there is an element of living life from a welcoming stance. Not, but. Okay? Those are two very different stances. Right? It's even more counterintuitive than what you've always heard. When you see a crash coming, then just tuck and relax. How realistic is that? If those of you who have been in accidents, I know a number of you have, if you didn't see it coming, chances are that was a blessing because you were relaxed. So too, to be effective in our world of hostility and aggression, our commitment to welcoming everything and everyone is the most important, but it also seems the most impossible. A welcoming stance includes the things that were in this text described by this writer. Those things deserving of respect. Everything that's honest, pure and decent, admirable, virtuous or worthy of praise. All those things that seem so boring in our action-packed, chaos-ridden, polarized culture. We are addicted to action, to reaction, to overreaction. Practicing a welcoming stance is definitely one of my growth edges right now, and it has been for some time. Being welcoming to what is. Truly living the belief that everything belongs. This is its own resistance, and without aggression and hostility. Valerie Kaur, the Sikh activist who actually grew up in Clovis, who is the author of Revolutionary Love, calls it being curious about every person, regardless of how abhorrent we may find them, practicing wonder about them. Now, it's impossible to be curious about a person if you ridicule them, if you lash out at them, and if you really hope for their demise. Believe me, approaching someone with curiosity and wonder takes a greater level of courage than to form a militia and to attack someone in the streets. We are trained to fight. We assume resistance is fight. But resistance is welcome. A welcome of all circumstances as gifts to open our eyes to see everyone and everything belonging. That is what brings joy. So while the future looked bright and I had many elaborate dreams at another period of my life, I now have vision. I have vision, I have purpose, and a growing commitment to wholeness for everything and everyone. It's harder. It's more painstaking word than speaking fiery words and wielding a laser intellect. But it is holy work. Work I truly believe in, and work that I invite you into. When practiced over time, these investments will result in the God of peace being with us, and it will bring joy. May it be so.